Good evening. MA Philosophy MP by 001, block number MGP-005, block number 4, unit number 13, Comprehensive Human Development. Introduction. Freedom is indivisible. Peace is indivisible. Economic prosperity is indivisible. The end of the Cold War heralded an era of unprecedented peace and stability. International scholars termed it as the end of history, the beginning of a transformed world. Soon everyone was proved wrong. The classical notion of the unilateral use of force to defend national boundaries gave way to much broader concepts of insecurity, threats emanating not only from military classes with rival states but also from other non-state actors and untamed untamed situations, environmental, cultural, and economic. The time was ripe to make space for broader aspects of security, succinctly put under succinctly put under comprehensive and cooperative human security. As CIA Director James Woosley once rightly remarked, "We have slain a large dragon, but now we find ourselves living in a jungle with a bewildering number of poisonous snakes, and in many ways the dragon was easier to keep track of." James Woosley, 1996. Aims and objective. This unit would enable you to understand the discourse of human development dating from its genesis and evolution, the theories against facts existing around us with special emphasis on poverty eradication and underdevelopment, terrorism and civilian deaths and environmental degradation and human development, the myths and facts that explain the overall picture of human development. Comprehensive human development, genesis and evolution. The term comprehensive or overall development security was coined in Japan during the 1970s, primarily with a quest to move beyond its wartime role and consolidate its post-war place in international system. In 1978, in the report on comprehensive national security, Japan identified six objectives: closer military and general cooperation with the United States, increasing Japan's capacity to defend its own territory, improvement in relations with China and the Soviet Union, attainment of energy security, food security, and measure for coping with major earthquakes. According to David, comprehensive development security was not just a statement of goals but a chain of tautly balanced national power, including various factors such as economy, diplomacy, and politics. Unlike Japan, ASEAN made scope for the broader notion of development security, incorporating domestic as well as non-military threats. As Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad said, national security is inseparable from political stability, economic success, and social harmony. Without these, all the guns in the world cannot prevent a country from being overcome by its enemies, whose ambitions can be fulfilled sometimes without firing a single shot. What is comprehensive human development? Like comprehensive development security, a comprehensive notion of human development would entail broad responses to those silent crises threatening individuals, underdevelopment, poverty, exposure to environmental hazard, civilian casualties that fail to respond to any emergency relief. In 1994, UNDP Human Development Report called it a sustainable human development that not only generates economic growth but distributes its benefits equitably, that regenerates the environment rather than destroying it, that empowers people rather than marginalizing them. It is development that gives priority to the poor, enlarging their choices and opportunities and providing for their participation in decisions that affect their lives. It is development that is pro people, pro nature, pro jobs, and pro women. Chapter 1, Human Development Report 1984. The report for the first time included a section on human security called Redefining Security. The human dimension. The report answers the question of security for whom, as legitimate concern of ordinary people who sought security in their daily lives. According to its chief proponent, Mehboob ul Haq, human security is a child who did not die, a disease that did not spread, a job that was not cut, an ethnic tension that did not explode in violence, a dissident who was not silenced. Human security is not a concern with weapons; it is a concern with human life and dignity. It is concerned with how people live and breathe in a society, how freely they exercise their many choices, how much access they have to market and social opportunities, and whether they live in conflict or in peace. It listed seven components or seven specific values of human security: economic security, food security, health security, environment security, environmental security, personal security, community security, and political security. It also pinpointed two sets of threats happening individuals. First, those threats which are more localized. These are threats that are particular to different societies or religions of the world and seemingly vary by level of economic development and geographical location. Second are those threats that are global in nature because threats within countries rapidly spill beyond national frontiers. Table 1: Direct violence, violence, death, disablements, victims of violent crime, sexual assault, terrorism, intergroup riots, program genocide, killing of government officials, agents, war casualties. Indirect violence, deprivation, levels of basic needs and entitlements, food, safe drinking water, primary health care, primary education. Dehumanization, slavery and trafficking in women and children, use of child soldiers, abduction, unlawful detention of political opponents, plus rigged trials. Indirect violence, diseases, incidents of life-threatening illness, infectious, cardiovascular, cancerous, international disputes, interstate tensions, crisis plus great power tensions, crisis, population displacement, national, regional, global, refugees and migration, most destructive weapons, the threat of WMDs plus advanced conventional small arms landmines, I- indirect violences, environmental degradation, local, national, regional, global, drugs, drug addiction, indirect violence, natural and man-made disaster. Table 2: National security and human security. Security of whom? National security primarily the state, human security primarily the individual. Security for what values? National security, territorial integrity and national independence. Human security, personal safety and individual freedom. Security from what threats? Direct threats from other state. Human security, direct and indirect threats. Security by what means? Force as the primary instrument of security to be used unilaterally for a state's own safety. Human security, force as a secondary instrument, sanctions, human development as key instrument of individual security. National security, balance of power is important. Power is equipped with military capabilities. Human security, balance of power is of limited utility. Soft power is important. Cooperation between states is tenuous beyond alliance relations. Cooperation between states, INGOs, and NGOs can be effective. Human security. Norms and institutions are of limited value. No, human security norms and institutions matter. Democratization and institutionalism enhance effectiveness. Source: Kanti Bajpayee's paper on human security concept and measurement. The report proposed a new framework of development cooperation that brings humanity together through a more equitable sharing of global economic opportunities and responsibilities. A world social order. A 2020 Compact for Human Development aimed to meet the most important targets of: number 1, universal primary education; Number B, adult illiteracy rates to be helped. Number C, primary health care for all. Number E, family planning services for all willing couples. Number F, safe drinking water and sanitation for all. It suggests that the major arms suppliers, 86% of arms originating from the five permanent members of the Security Council, agree on a targeted reduction in military spending to 3% a year and a right of every child to food as sacrosanct as the right to vote. Indeed, comprehensive human development reflected a much broader concept that human security, as it referred to a process of widening the range of people's choices, while the latter implied people's right to exercise these choices freely and safely, and that they can be relatively confident that the opportunities they have today are not totally lost tomorrow. Huck in 1994 rightly pointed out that the human development paradigm is the most holistic development that exists today. It embraces every development issue, including economic growth, social investment, people's empowerment, provision of basic needs, and social safety need, political and cultural freedoms, and all other aspects of people's life. It is neither technocratic nor overly philosophical. It is a practical reflection of real itself. Human security, human development. Human security, vital core of freedoms. Human development, all freedoms. Protect from threat risk. Human development, expand. Human security, participation. Human development, agency and participation. Human security, protection. Human development, many roles and institutions. Human security, multidimensional. Human development, multidimensional. Human security, all countries. Human development, all countries. Human security includes all people. Human development includes all people. Human security needs political will. Human development needs political will. Human security, people, not territory. Human development, people, not economy. The basic objective of human development is to consider the multiple dimensions of human well-being and create an enabling environment for people to enjoy long, healthy, and creative lives. It is contrary to what mainstream economists have long believed that economic growth is the surest way to increase choice and freedom and create happiness, that money alone is absolutely good because it is the abstract satisfaction of every wish. Everything else can be satisfy one wish else can only satisfy one wish. Numerous studies demonstrated that happiness eludes those who commit themselves wholly to the path of economic growth. For instance, despite over a century of profound material growth in America, survey shows that Americans are not noticeably happier, not happier than a bondless fakir trudging a temple areas of Banaras, or a penniless beggar on the street of Vietnam. To achieve development, Amartya says, requires the removal of poverty, tyranny, lack of economic opportunities, social deprivation, and neglect of public services, and the machinery of repression. The good life is partially a life of genuine choice and not one in which the person is forced into a particular life, however rich it might be in other respects. In 2009, the Legatum Prosperity Index took this development issue a step further by tabulating those obscure commerce of welfare that encompasses material wealth and quality of life, rather than replicating other measurements that rank countries by their actual level of wealth. This index produces rankings based on the foundation of prosperity. These are factors that help to make happy citizens in a given country. Assessing 104 countries accounting for 90% of the world's population, the PI variables are built on 9 blocks of prosperity identified as economic fundamentals, entrepreneurship and innovation, democratic institutions, education, health, safety and security, governance, personal freedom, social capital. The key findings of the Prosperity Index show: number one, prosperous countries are strong across the board. They do well in all 9 sub-indexes, in indicating that the foundation of prosperity reinforces each other. Number B, freedom cannot be divided. while some nations seek to allow one respect of freedom while restricting other aspects. Prosperous nations reflect freedom in all its dimensions: economic, political, religious, and personal. Number C, 16 of the top 20 most prosperous countries are in North America and Europe. Number D, good governance is central to life satisfaction and economic progress. Number E, happiness is opportunity, good health, relationship, and the freedom to choose who you want to be. Number F, strong communities are better than weak governments. Number G, money cannot buy happiness. Purest, only in the poorest countries do increases in income have a significant effect on people's life satisfaction. Legatum Prosperity Index 2009. Ground reality. Indeed, we have come a long way in discussing prosperity and development and security in our existing literature, track second dialogue, and in the other decision-making processes, along with figures. Facts have apparently endorsed this long period of peace and calm, with no major continental wars fought after World War II, while with people looking more prosperous, confident, and interconnected, and global situation more adaptable to quick change. The present section is an attempt to examine these myths and facts of human development with a special emphasis on underdevelopment and poverty eradication, terrorism and civilian deaths, and environmental degradation as it exists around in its most unbest form. Underdevelopment and poverty eradication. By the late 1990s, the fifth of the world's people living in highest income countries had 86 6% of world GDP. The bottom fifth, just 1%. 82% of world export markets. The bottom fifth, just 1%. 68% of foreign direct investment. The bottom fifth had just 1%. Income of the richest 5% of the world class, 114 times that of the poorest 5%. The richest 1% had as much income as the poorest 57%. Uh, as many as 800 million people in the developing world, and at least 24 million people in the developed and transition economies lacks access to enough food supply. These people suffer from daily hunger, malnutrition, and starvation deaths, and the reasons for food insecurity arising from a number of factors, including inequitable distribution of food, environmental degradation, natural disaster, and conflicts. Natural disaster like drought has triggered famines and civil wars in the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, and India. In August 2009, India declared 177 out of 626 districts as drought hit that resulted in starvation, death, farmers committing suicide, and many people taking to forced migration. Environmental degradation in the form of rapid deforestation, logging for trade has resulted in the elimination of 2.4% of the world's forest cover since 1990s. War and conflict have equally contributed to reduce food production with a serious impact on the poorest households. The world's 35 million refugees and internally displaced persons are among those who experience conflict-induced hunger. In some regions where food might otherwise have been available, conflict made people food insecure, affecting their access to adequate food as well as their ability to lead healthy and productive lives. Somalia, Sudan, and the Darfur are some examples of such conflict zones. Many hunger-stricken denizens have denizens here have taken to piracy, terrorism, and trafficking, both in arms and humans, as a means of their livelihood. Even the economic recession in that hit the globe last year has further accentuated the gap between the rich and the poor and their accessibility to food. The astronomical rise in prices of the basic necessities of life, food, clothing, and housing, rampant joblessness and unemployment, By May 2019, the United States itself had lost nearly 6 million jobs since December 2007, with its total number of jobless rising to 14.5 million, has literally pushed the globe to a no solution situation. While most post Cold War scholars heralded the new era of globalization, interconnectedness as the beginning of a homogeneous liberal state with broadening scope for a homogeneous classless society. Francis Fukuyama, 1989, a distinct school of thought, saw nothing new about globalization, even nothing global about globalization. Peter Such and uh, Juanita Elias, for them, the highest level of interconnectedness are between the most developed states in North America, Europe, and East Asia, while the poorest areas of the world remain marginal to this. Taking foreign direct investment as an example, when multinational firms decide to establish factories in foreign locations, Hist and Thompson show that very little of the beneficiary goes into the states in the developing world, while the maximum profit goes to the triad of industrialized states, North America, East Asia, and Europe. In fact, the foreign investment that does go to states in the developing world tend to be concentrated in a few states like Mexico, Brazil, and China. States in Africa receive hardly any foreign investment, further marginalizing some of the poorest countries in the world from the global economy. Some scholars have even termed globalization as a necessary myth that states in the developed world have utilized to protect their own interest. These imagined economies represents a kind of hyper globalized zone of the global economy in which MNCs roam the globe looking for cheap labor, enabling global finance shift across the global money market at the push of a button, and use internet technologies for the fast dispatch of data and information. Cameron and Palan in 2004. In this transformed economic space, there is no alternative to the rising tide of globalization. It naturally culminates to a third imagined economy, that of social exclusion, that concern the way in which groups within societies have been excluded and marginalized from globalization. The important point here is that all these economies have been imagined. They are poorly mythical but powerful myths, imagines that have played a damaging role in shaping the world in which we live today. Like the vicious circle of poverty, here we have a vicious circle of disparity that actively works both at the domestic and international level. Intellectual challenges to mainstream globalization, therefore, calls for anti-globalization movement. This term is applied to the groups and networks of campaigners who seek to challenge the dominance of new liberal economic ideas in global politics and what they see as a multinational corporate driven global capitalism, which was overwhelmingly linked to the 1999 battle for settle to protest against the injustices for the new liberal economic order unleashed by the World Bank, IMF, and the WTO. No doubt, Prime Minister Gordon Brown of the United Kingdom, President Nicolas Sarkozy of France, and other heads of states have mentioned the need for a new Bretton Woods, even a third generation of international institution. The present world body urgently requires strengthening to become, in US President Obama's own description, a global institution that works, not the current G7 and G8 or an upgraded G20 version to include emerging powers, not ad hoc coalition of the willing or Robert Kagan's League of Democracies, but a universal global body. Anything less constitutes wishful thinking to escape from the complexities of addressing daunting global challenges. It calls for a more dynamic UN with a refurbished Security Council that allows flexible engagement within be- benign power like India, better accommodation for weaker powers like the African Union to discuss and debate issues transcending national boundaries, precisely those dealing with problems without passport at the domestic level. Much of the cause of separatism, ethnic strife, and civil war are hidden in deeper economic deprivation of the periphery, where the richer few are more interested to cut the bigger slice of cake to suit their convenience. Although much has flown out of hand and little remains to be done, the call of the hour necessitates to weigh, weigh quality weigh quality over anything else. Arrest the local points of systemic failure, create state-sponsored and state-administered social safety nets that create self-reliant job opportunities for the deprived section. Terrorism and civilian death. The nuclear holocaust on Hiroshima and Nagasaki claimed some 150,000 lives, with many more left gravely maimed and injured. The war on terror and holy war by terrorists have directly killed 6 lakh 20,006 people, according to an independent research carried on in 2006. Created 4.5 million refugees and cost the West more than the sum needed to pay off the debts of every poor nation on earth. The extraordinary scale of conflict, claiming lives from New York to Bali and London to Lahore, and from Lahore to India and Sri Lanka, has literally brought to question whether the war on terror can be won. For some scholars, like violent crime, deadly disease, and other sources, terrorism can be reduced and contained, but it cannot be totally eliminated. According to Singapore's Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong, the new terrorism stems from a religious ideology that is infused with an incapable that with an im, implacable hostility to all secular governments, especially the West and in the particular in the US. Huntington called it the clash of civilizations. This religious terrorism is very different from insurgency, armed conflict arising out of economic deprivation of the periphery, since here the group has a distinct objective, a structured terror system that keeps the process going. A framework of terror system. The loop shows the recurring process of terrorism, where successful and failed missions work at feedback mechanism into the input. Terrorism arising out of economic deprivation, Maoist and Naxals. Number second, religious terrorism. The concept of a terror system in a replication of David Easton's political system. Terrorism arising out of economic deprivation, Maoist and Naxal. Religious terrorism. Flexible objective. Reasons hidden in poverty, unemployment, financial crisis. It, if adequately addressed, scopes for peaceful reconciliation. Religious terrorism, fixed objective, jihad and establishment of a homogeneous Muslim states, targeted abductions, seizure and hostage taking of purely economic reasons. Religious terrorism aimed at mass annihilation, any means to end leading to a systemic breakdown. Uh, uh, Number first, terrorism arising out of economic deprivation, restricted flow of money, fundraising from borrowing from a mother group, abduction, kidnappings. Religious terrorism, unabated flow of money, arms, and ammunitions, dropping from petrodollars, drugs, and human trafficking. Number one, terrorism arising out of economic deprivation, reaches transboundary, intra and interstate. Religious terrorism reaches transnational techno-savvy. , 1 broken heart to regroup. can easily break and regroup into sleeper, dormant, and active cells. Number one, simple leaders, not a mesmerizer. Charismatic leadership with corporate aptitude. To combat this sort of terrorism requires a three-pronged strategy to number eight direct terrorist group effort to change and adapt, anticipate whether those efforts will be successful, act to limit terrorist groups ability to learn or undermine their learning efforts, thus detect, anticipate, and act. Number A, limiting the terrorist groups access to critical knowledge resources. Number B, identifying and preventing acquisition of novel technologies and weapons. Number C, locating and targeting a terrorist group's learning leadership. Those individual critical to the ability to carry out organizational learning processes. Number D, identifying and breaking critical connections among terrorist group members. Number E, denying these groups the safe haven needed for experimentation and innovation. Proposals for separate research organizations, departments dealing with terrorism studies in universities, a world counter-terrorism body empowered to examine pragmatic and psychological causes behind old and new terrorism can be effective measures aimed to combat this scourge. Vis-a-vis a global body UN which is already plugged with numerous problems since we have lost too many innocent lives in this fourth generation warfare. Now is the time when actions should speak louder than words. Those actions being well planned, organized to save our future generations from hidden fanatics. Civilian causalities during some of the most recent popular attacks worldwide. Attack 2611 Mumbai attack. Civilian dead 98 civilian, 14 plus men, 14 foreigner injured, 327 let responsible. 7/7 London underground attack. Civilian dead 56, injured 700. Al Qaeda claimed responsibility. First Lashkar-e-Taiba responsible. 2002 Marriott Hotel bombing in Bali. 2002 civilian dead. 2002 88 Australians injured 300. Al Qaeda claimed responsibility. 2003 ASG attack on a chemical tanker named Devi Medrim. Civilian dead. 100 on board killed. Injured. Abu Sayyaf group claimed responsibility. WTC 9/11 attack on Twin Tower. Civilian dead 2,551. Injured 215. 460 emergency responders. 31 January 1996 Litte attack on Central Bank of Colombo. Civilian dead 81. Injured 1,400. Red terror unleashed across different parts of India had already claimed 900 lives so far. Environmental degradation and human development. To top all other man-made calamities, human society today stands at the edge of a sinking earth that has already started giving enough indications of the final apoca- apocalypse. Tsunamis, rising level of seas, forest fires in Indonesia, Australia and the West, landslides in the Philippines and China, hurricane in South America, vanishing species in the animal chain, and rising temperatures owing to carbon gas emission and global warming. A recent report by a research team confirmed that the Arctic ice cap will disappear completely in the summer month within 20 to 30 years, but in less than that it will have considerably retreated, said Professor Peter Wadhams, head of the Polar Ocean Physics Group at Cambridge University. In about 10 years, the Arctic ice will be considered an open sea. Already, man-made problems of overpopulation, excessive stress on non-renewable resources, damming water bodies, massive deforestation for industrialization has heralded the pandemic. Rise in avian influenza, SARS epidemic, infectious disease like HIV/AIDS, Tamil flu, swine flu, and still more to come by. Scholars unanimously agree that although a coming pandemic cannot be avoided, its impact can be considerably lessened depending on how the world leaders from the heads of the G8, G77 groupings to local officials decide to respond. The ongoing G77 meet at Copenhagen has called industrialized nations to cut their carbon emission by 40% by 2020 and another 40% by 2035. India has already agreed to voluntarily reduce its carbon emission level by 20 to 20% from 2005 level by 2020, while members of the Association of Small Island Nations demanded the creation of a new protocol under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Precisely, the challenges of the post-Cold War world call for collaborative international action requiring full engagement of all nation states, rich and poor, north and south, developed and developing. The world expects no less, and it is everyone's responsibility to deliver sincerely. Summary: even if the future of a comprehensive human development looks very grim, there is no denial that the series of literature on Human Development Index, Prosperity Index has left hardly any problems encompassing human well-being unanswered. Today, issues cannot hide public attention and public awareness. Issues have also blurred the apparent distinction between rich and poor, north and south, developed and developing nations. The existing economic, environmental, regional, nuclear, non-proliferation communities are evidences of modern man's genuine effort at peaceful coexistence. For international relations scholars, it is neoliberalism's ultimate triumph over the constricted, narrow world of realism. The only need of for the hour is to infuse this human security with more belief. The more belief in the system, more belief in the global body like UN, more belief in flexible Bretton Woods, more belief in nuclear non-proliferation activities, more belief in cleaner environmental groupings. Only this belief of being bound together and to act together can help us check out remedies to combat social anomalies of religious fanaticism, disease, poverty, insurgency, and armed conflicts. For no society in the past has been without problems, and no societies in the future will be without problems. It only calls to dig out the best out of the worst alternative to maximize the minimal profit. It is good to recall Voltaire's concept of tolerance here, where the society governed by the culture of tolerance is based on the premise that it possesses every claim to a complete knowledge of the given state of affairs, good, bad, or status quo. Therefore, wisdom would consist in one's admitting that I may not be right and you may not be wrong, since we are all product of a frailly fallible and prone to error. It is natural to pardon each other's follies. That's the first principle of human rights and the first stepping stone towards overall human development. Thank you.